My name is Shaul. I am an Orthodox rabbi and I work in an organisation called Tikkun, which is based in northwest London in the United Kingdom. I just want, just my kind of introduction to the principles, how I came to my understanding of the principles, is that I was having kind of a conflict with a fellow director in a business non-profit that we were running, and it was recommended that we go to Lacona, to kind of the place in Lacona, you know, the Pransky and Associates, where we could where they were great at a conflict resolution. And we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into, or what all we felt was we're just going to kind of try and resolve this conflict. So we went there, and we had you know, a long journey from over here, and it cost us a lot of money to go with the flights and everything else, and they're not so cheap over there, you know. So we got there, and kind of, you know, we were living very busy lives, and we came in, and we were with Aaron Turner and Keith Blevins, and they start talking to us, and how was your flight, and how's the hotel, and you know, how do you like this Lacona, and there's beautiful tulips here, and we're kind of looking at each other like, you know, do these guys know why we're here? You know, did anyone explain to them? You know, we're here for just a little chat, little conversation, and you know, after about an hour and a half of conversation, they said, well, that was a great session. Why don't we take a break now? You know, let's take 3 hours off. And we were like, how does this work? You know, what are these guys doing over here? These guys are, you know, we're going to charge a few $1,000s, you know, to just sit and chat with people as well. So we came next session, and they were kind of doing the same thing, you know, and eventually we said to them, you know, are we ever going to talk about what we're here for? You know, do you intend to talk about that, or just to spend 4 days talking about nothing? They said, oh, no, don't worry, we're going to talk about that. But the 7 principles we want to introduce you to first that we think will be helpful in understanding this. And we feel that the better the place that you're in to start with, before we start talking about what's on your minds, the more likely you are to resolve it in a healthy way. And that kind of made sense to me, so I was ready to listen to them and ready to hear what they had to say. They started talking about these principles. And they seemed very consistent with Judaism to me, and I was ready to listen, and it's interesting, very powerful stuff, but I still didn't see what's it got to do with the conflict that we have. After a couple of days, we kind of started talking more and more about these principles, and after a couple of days, they kind of were starting to strike me a little more, making a little more sense to me, and a little more helpful and a little more useful. I went back at one point to my hotel room. I was sitting in my hotel room just kind of considering the ideas that I'd been hearing. Suddenly, just kind of out the blue, it struck me the significance of what they've been talking about. Just from nowhere, it's like a lightning bolt from the blue. It suddenly made sense to me. I suddenly saw it for myself, as opposed to being some nice theoretical, intellectual idea. Those ideas suddenly came down into me. And I saw the world from the perspective of the principles. And the world to me looked different. I was sitting in my hotel room, and to me, I put it in a Jewish context, you know. I saw the world as just an expression of God's will. And to me, the chair in the room was just a manifestation of God. And because of that, the chair was just beautiful. And the table was beautiful. And the curtains were beautiful. And the world, and this room, this little dinky hotel room, was the most gorgeous experience of life. And I sat there for like 45 minutes just looking around the room, just my body was tingling and just experiencing the world in a totally different way than I'd ever experienced it before. And I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to go anywhere. I wanted to sit there for the rest of my life and go nowhere else. But I had an appointment I had to go to, you know, and I went, and as I was walking down the street, I was thinking about the conflict that we were having with this colleague of mine. And we hadn't talked about it yet. We were still only talking about this principle 3 days in. And it suddenly occurred to me, you know what? I have all the solutions to this conflict within myself. And I got back, and kind of the 3 of them were there. I was a little bit late. They were waiting for me. I was indulging in my experience a little too much. And I said to them, I just want to say something before we start. And that is that, well done to the 2 of you. I think you've resolved this conflict. Now, my colleague, who really wasn't getting these principles, looked at me like, what planet have you just come from? Or have they been injecting you with something? You know, what have they done over here? We haven't even talked about the conflict. We haven't even started on the conflict. How could they have resolved it? This is ridiculous. I said to him, no, I said, you see, from understanding these principles, I understand that really this conflict, while it looks to be something external, it looks to be something between us, I realize that this conflict is just the way I'm seeing it. And this conflict is just in my perspective. And we might have differences of opinion, but differences of opinion don't have to be a conflict. And we might disagree, but that doesn't have to be a conflict. And I believe that what they've given me is the ability to resolve this conflict on my own. And that to me is infinitely more useful than them resolving the conflict for me. And that's what I believe that's why I love the principles so much. Because they give a person the ability to find their own solutions in life. You know, I find that you go to a lot of therapy, and it's like, you know, well, we'll work a lot of time on this problem, and we've helped you solve this problem. That's great, but what about my next problem now? Well, come back for more time, and we'll kind of solve that next problem for you. Yeah, but I got another one as well. Yeah, well, and 10 years later, you're still working on problems. I believe these principles give somebody independence. They give the potential for somebody to actually walk away from a therapist, walk away from somebody teaching them these ideas, and never need to come back, and be able to find their own independence and their own path in life and their own direction, and whatever they choose for that direction to be. That it gives them the ability to have the tools. Well, the word tools sounds a bit more in the form, but they have the ability to find their own direction in life with this understanding to guide them, and solve their own problems for themselves. And to me, that's a beautiful thing. I don't like the idea as an educator, as a teacher, as somebody who does some level of therapy and counseling. I don't want to solve people's problems for them. That's not my job, and that's not a therapist's job. My job is to give people the ability to solve their own problems. And until I came across the principles, I didn't really know how to do that.